I built my life like I build my buildings, with precision, reinforced foundations, and contingency plans. But I never planned for the day I'd have to demolish everything I'd created to save what mattered most. My name is Henry Carter, and for 16 years I thought I'd constructed the perfect life. Natalie and I met in college, married young, and built our dreams together brick by brick. Our twin daughters, Emma and Sophie, just turned 14. Smart, beautiful girls who inherited Natalie's grace and my stubborn determination. My architectural firm, Henry & Associates, had grown from a basement startup to a respected name in commercial development. The house we lived in, a modern colonial I'd designed myself, stood as a monument to everything we'd achieved together. But structures fail in predictable ways. First come the hairline cracks so subtle you might mistake them for shadows. Then the settling, the slight shifts that throw everything off balance. By the time you notice the real damage, the foundation has already begun to crumble. It started 3 months ago, in July. Natalie began staying late at her marketing firm, something that hadn't happened in years. "Big campaign," she'd say, pecking my cheek as she rushed out. The gym sessions doubled. Morning runs became 2-hour CrossFit marathons. She bought new clothes, expensive pieces that hung in our closet with tags still attached, waiting for occasions that never seemed to arrive when I was around. "You should take that weekend conference in Chicago," she suggested one evening, not looking up from her phone. "I thought you wanted me to cut back on travel," I replied, watching her thumb scroll frantically across the screen. "Did I?" She glanced up, that practiced smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Well, we could use the extra income. The girls will be starting college soon." The girls, everything always came back to them. Yet lately, Natalie seemed eager to schedule their activities when I'd be home, freeing up her own calendar. "Henry can take you to practice," became her refrain. Not that I minded. I cherished every moment with Emma and Sophie. But Natalie's sudden disinterest in family time gnawed at me. Then there was Dylan, our divorced neighbor, fresh off his third marriage's spectacular implosion. He'd moved in 6 months ago, in April, all practiced charm and strategic masculinity. The kind of guy who always seemed to be washing his Porsche shirtless when the neighborhood wives jogged by. Natalie had mentioned him casually at first. Dylan helped with the groceries. Dylan fixed the garage door sensor. Dylan recommended this amazing coffee place downtown. He offered to train me, Natalie announced last week. "You know, personal training. He's certified." "Since when?" I asked. "Since always." "He just doesn't advertise it," she replied, applying lipstick in our bathroom mirror, a shade darker than usual. "You could join us if you want, but I know you're busy with the Riverside project." I was busy. Always busy. Building things, creating things, maintaining things. While apparently things at home had started deteriorating without my notice, the credit card statements told their own story. Charges at Café Noir on Tuesday afternoons, when Natalie claimed to be in client meetings. A purchase at La Perla that hadn't resulted in any romantic evening for us. Cash withdrawals that didn't align with any household expenses I could identify. "What's this charge for?" I'd asked once, pointing to a $200 restaurant bill from a place I'd never heard of. "Client lunch," she said smoothly. "The Peterson account. I told you about it." She hadn't, but I let it slide. Maybe she had, and I'd been distracted by blueprints and building codes. That was the insidious thing about doubt. It made you question your own memory, your own perceptions. Tonight was different, though. Tonight, as we sat around the dinner table, Natalie's phone buzzed incessantly. She'd flip it face down, smile at us, then sneak glances when she thought we weren't looking. Emma and Sophie chattered about school. But I watched my wife's face cycle through expressions I'd never seen before. Anticipation, excitement, a private satisfaction that had nothing to do with our daughter's stories. "Dylan offered to help me and your father with some personal training," Natalie announced suddenly, cutting through Sophie's tale about her history teacher. "But Daddy's probably too busy, aren't you, Henry?" The girls looked at me expectantly. Natalie's phone buzzed again. "Maybe," I said carefully. "When did you discuss this with Dylan?" "Oh, we ran into each other at the coffee shop this morning," she answered, reaching for her wine glass, and I noticed her hands trembling slightly. "He mentioned he has some openings. Café Noir, I thought. Tuesday morning, October 1st, when she was supposedly in a partnership meeting. After dinner, I helped the girls with homework while Natalie retreated to our bedroom, claiming a headache. Through the thin walls of the house I'd designed for acoustic privacy, I could hear her muffled voice, punctuated by occasional laughter. When I entered our bedroom an hour later, she quickly ended her call. "Who was that?" I asked. "Just Melissa. You know how she goes on," she responded, plugging her phone into the charger on her nightstand, angling it away from my side of the bed. Melissa, her sister, lived in Seattle, 3 hours behind us. It would be 7 p.m. there, dinner time with her family. I said nothing, just nodded and went to brush my teeth. Now, lying in the darkness beside my wife of 16 years, I listened to her phone buzz with incoming texts. She'd reach over, silence it, then pretend to sleep. But I could feel her tension, the coiled energy of someone waiting for something, or someone. The structural integrity of my marriage was failing. The only question now was whether to shore up the damage or document it for the inevitable demolition. My architectural instincts, honed over 20 years of practice, already knew the answer. When the foundation is compromised beyond repair, you don't renovate. You rebuild from scratch. The next morning, Wednesday, October 2nd, I called in sick to work, something I hadn't done in 5 years. Natalie barely noticed, too busy getting ready for her client meeting that required her new Armani dress and the perfume I'd bought her for our anniversary. "You feeling okay?" she asked absently, fastening an earring. "Just need a day," I replied from bed. "Might be coming down with something." "There's soup in the pantry," she said, grabbing her phone, checking it reflexively. "I'll be late tonight. The Cooper presentation got moved to 5. Cooper. I made a mental note to verify that later." "Dylan still coming by for that training session?" I asked. "What? Oh, no. That's Thursday," she answered, kissing my forehead. "A performance, nothing more. Feel better." 20 minutes after her BMW pulled out of the garage, I was at my home office computer, my fingers steady despite the rage building in my chest. 17 years in architecture had taught me that emotion was the enemy of precision. You don't sketch blueprints with shaking hands. Natalie had grown careless with her passwords, using variations of the girls' birthdays for everything. Within an hour, I'd accessed our joint cloud storage, her email, and our credit card statements going back 6 months. The evidence assembled itself like a building schematic, every layer revealing new structural damage. The emails were circumspect but damning. Messages to M about meeting times always during her supposed work hours. Reservations at hotels I recognized. The Grand View, the Marquise, all charged to her personal card, which I'd stopped monitoring months ago. But it was the email to her sister Melissa from September 15th that drove the knife deepest. "Henry won't suspect anything. He's too buried in his projects to notice I exist. I've been documenting everything. His absence from school events, the canceled anniversaries, the weekends at the office. My lawyer says with the right documentation, I could get the house, the girls, and enough alimony to maintain our lifestyle. Dylan says I deserve someone who actually sees me. My lawyer. She already had a lawyer." I sat back, my architectural mind automatically cataloging, organizing, structuring. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a calculated demolition of my life, with my daughters as collateral damage. The doorbell interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Through my office window, I saw Dylan on our front porch, gym bag slung over his shoulder. He was checking his phone, smirking at something on the screen. I opened the door before he could ring again. "Henry!" His surprise was quickly masked by that practiced smile. "Natalie said you were at work. Plans changed," I said, keeping my voice level. "She's not here." "Oh." He shifted the gym bag. "We were supposed to—" "She wanted to go over some training routines." "At 10 in the morning? On a Wednesday?" I pressed. His smile faltered slightly. "I have flexible hours." "How convenient," I replied. Studying him, 6'2", deliberately sculpted physique. The kind of aggressive handsomeness that peaked in high school and spent the rest of life trying to recapture that glory. "You know, Dylan, I've been thinking about getting in shape myself. Maybe we could work something out." "Sure, man. Absolutely," he responded with palpable relief. "Just have Natalie give me a call and we'll set something up." "I'll do that," I said flatly. He retreated to his Porsche, and I watched him pull out his phone before driving away. 30 seconds later, Natalie texted me. "Feeling better? Going into meetings now. Phone off until 3 meetings, right?" I spent the rest of the morning building my case like I'd build a structure, methodically, thoroughly, with redundant support systems. Screenshots, financial records, credit reports showing inquiries from divorce attorneys. Natalie had been planning this for at least 4 months, since June, maybe longer. The private investigator I hired that afternoon was a recommendation from a contractor who'd gone through something similar. James Cooper, no relation to Natalie's fictional client, was a former cop who specialized in matrimonial investigations. "I need everything," I told him in his sparse downtown office. "Not just the affair, the whole picture." Cooper reviewed my preliminary evidence with professional detachment. "This is more than just cheating. She's building a case against you." "I know," I confirmed. "The systematic documentation, the financial maneuvering. Your wife's not acting alone. Someone's coaching her," he observed. "Her sister's a paralegal," I offered. "That explains some of it." He pulled out a contract. "But this Dylan guy, has he done this before?" "3 divorces," I answered. Cooper's expression shifted. "Let me guess. All of them walked away with nothing?" I hadn't considered that angle. "I don't know. I'll find out. Men like him, they tend to have patterns," he said, sliding the contract across the desk. 2 weeks, I'll have everything you need. In the meantime, act normal. Don't confront her. Don't change your routine. And document everything on your end, every interaction, every suspicious moment." That evening, I sat through dinner like an actor in my own life, listening to Natalie fabricate details about her day, watching her sneak glances at her phone, pretending not to notice when she excused herself to take a call from her mother, who laughed too deep and masculine for a 70-year-old woman. Emma asked about the school science fair. Sophie wanted to know if I could help with her geometry homework. Normal teenage concerns in what they believed was a normal family. Natalie contributed just enough to seem engaged, but I saw her checking the clock, calculating how soon she could retreat to her phone, to him. "Mom, are you okay?" Emma asked suddenly. "You seem distracted." "Just work stuff, honey," Natalie replied with a hollow smile. "You know how it is." "Actually," I interjected, my voice calm. "Why don't you take the evening off? I'll help the girls with homework. You can handle your work stuff." Natalie's eyes met mine, searching for suspicion, finding only the familiar distance she'd been cultivating as evidence of my neglect. "If you're sure," she said hesitantly. "Absolutely. Family first, right?" I responded. The irony was lost on her, but not on me. As she disappeared into our bedroom with her phone, I sat with our daughters, helping them navigate the complexities of adolescent academia while their mother texted her lover down the hall, planning the destruction of everything they'd ever known. 2 weeks, Cooper had said. 2 weeks to gather the evidence that would either save my family or destroy it completely. But as I listened to Natalie's muffled laughter through our bedroom door, I realized the family I thought I had was already gone. All that remained was deciding how to clear the rubble. Cooper's report arrived on Thursday, October 17th, hand-delivered in a manila envelope that felt heavier than its contents should warrant. I sat in my office, rain streaking the windows I'd specially designed for northern light, and read about the systematic destruction of 3 marriages. Dylan Murphy, age 38, fitness trainer and serial predator. The pattern was so consistent it could have been scripted. Target married women in affluent neighborhoods. Begin with innocent encounters, grocery store help, lawn care advice, casual jogging routes that happen to align. Escalate to personal training offers, then coffee, then afternoon sessions at hotels. But the truly insidious part was the end game. Dylan didn't just seduce married women. He coached them through their divorces, ensuring maximum financial damage to their husbands while positioning himself as the supportive alternative. 3 ex-wives had followed this pattern. 3 husbands had lost everything, and now he was running the same play in our neighborhood with 3 new targets. Natalie, Helen Thompson, and Lisa Walsh. Cooper had included surveillance photos that made my stomach turn. Natalie entering the Marquis Hotel at 2 p.m. last Tuesday, October 8th. Helen Thompson in Dylan's Porsche outside a wine bar. Lisa Walsh leaving Dylan's house at midnight while her husband Mike traveled for business. There's more, Cooper had noted. The 3 women have been coordinating. Same divorce attorney, Patricia Hoffman. Same financial tactics. They're even using the same coffee shop for their strategy meetings. I knew John Thompson professionally. We'd worked on 2 commercial projects together. Mike Walsh lived 3 houses down, a software executive who traveled constantly for work. Good men, both of them, devoted fathers. And completely oblivious to what was happening, the hardest decision wasn't whether to tell them. It was how. I chose Murphy's Bar, a dive outside our suburban bubble where none of our wives would ever venture. I arranged the meeting for that evening, Thursday the 17th. I arrived early, claiming a corner booth with sight lines to both entrances, a habit from years of client meetings where positioning mattered. John arrived first, confusion evident on his weathered face. "Henry, what's this about?" "Your message sounded urgent." "Wait for Mike," I said, sliding a beer across the table. "You're both going to need that." Mike showed up 10 minutes later, checking his phone constantly. "Helen thinks I'm at a client dinner. This better be important." "She knows you're not at a client dinner," I said quietly. "She's known your real schedule for months." The atmosphere shifted. John set down his beer slowly. "What are you talking about?" he asked warily. I placed Cooper's report on the scarred wooden table. "Our wives are having affairs. All 3 of them. With the same man." The silence that followed was deafening. Mike laughed, a sharp, disbelieving bark. "This is insane." "You're insane," he sputtered. "Page 12, I instructed. "Tuesday, September 10th. "You were in Seattle." "Lisa told you she was at book club?" Mike flipped to the page. The color drained from his face as he stared at the photograph of his wife entering Dylan's house at 9 p.m., not leaving until after midnight. John was rifling through his section, his hands beginning to shake. "This can't be—" "Helen wouldn't," he muttered. "Page 18. The wine bar on 3rd Street. Monday, September 16th, when she was supposedly visiting her mother," I said. For several minutes, nobody spoke. We sat in that dingy booth. 3 successful men reduced to staring at photographic evidence of our failures as husbands, as partners, as men. "I'm going to kill him," Mike said finally, his voice flat and dangerous. "No," I countered firmly. "You're going to do something worse. You're going to take everything from him legally and systematically, just like they plan to do to us." John looked up from a photo of Helen kissing Dylan in his Porsche. "They?" he questioned. I explained about the coordination, the shared attorney, the documented evidence of our neglect. How our wives had been building cases against us for months, coached by a man who'd perfected this routine through 3 previous marriages. "Natalie has a lawyer?" John asked, stunned. "They all do, same one. Patricia Hoffman," I confirmed. Mike slammed his fist on the table, making our beers jump. 6 months. 6 months of Mike, take that trip. "Mike, the kids are fine with the nanny." She was clearing the field. "They've been moving money too," I continued. "Small amounts, but consistent. Check your accounts." Both men pulled out their phones. I watched their faces change as they discovered what I'd found days ago: systematic financial bleeding disguised as shopping, salons, and fitness expenses. "What do we do?" John asked, his voice hollow. "We fight back," I said decisively. "But we do it smart. I've already retained Bill Turner." Both men looked up sharply. "Turner was legendary in our circles. The divorce attorney you hired when you wanted scorched earth. He's expensive," Mike noted. "Less expensive than losing everything. I've negotiated a group rate if we all retain him. Strength in numbers," I explained. John was studying the surveillance photos again. "This Dylan, what do we know about him?" I shared Cooper's background report. The bankruptcies after each divorce. The restraining orders from 2 ex-wives. The pattern of targeting married women with successful husbands. "He's a parasite," Mike spat. "A f***ing parasite." "Yes," I agreed. "And parasites are vulnerable when exposed to the right conditions." We spent the next 2 hours strategizing like we were planning a hostile takeover, because essentially, we were. Turner would file simultaneously for all 3 divorces on Friday, October 25th, catching the women off guard and preventing them from coordinating their response. Cooper would continue surveillance, gathering more evidence. We'd document everything, mirror their tactics, but with better execution. "What about Dylan?" John asked as we prepared to leave. I looked at both men carefully. "Turner handles the legal battle. But Dylan, he requires a different kind of justice." Mike's smile was cold. "The kind that doesn't leave a paper trail?" "The kind that ensures he never does this again," I confirmed. We agreed to meet again on Sunday, October 20th. In the meantime, we'd maintain the facade, the oblivious husbands too buried in work to notice our wives' betrayals. Let them grow comfortable in their deception while we assembled our response. As I drove home, I thought about Emma and Sophie, asleep in their beds, unaware that their world was about to shatter. Everything I did from this point forward would be for them, to ensure they didn't become casualties of their mother's selfishness and Dylan's predation. Natalie was in bed when I arrived, feigning sleep. I stood in our bedroom doorway studying the woman I'd loved for 16 years, wondering when she'd become a stranger. Her phone sat on the nightstand, and I knew it contained messages to Dylan, plans for our destruction, lies upon lies upon lies. "How was your evening?" she asked without opening her eyes. "Productive," I replied. "Very productive." She murmured something and rolled away from me. I went to my office and pulled up the blueprint for our house, my first major design, created with such hope and attention to detail. Every room had been planned with our future in mind. The girls' bedrooms with built-in desks for homework. The master suite with its reading nook where Natalie used to curl up with her books. The kitchen designed for family dinners that had become increasingly rare. But I wasn't looking at it for nostalgia. I was studying it like a general studies a battlefield, memorizing every angle, every strength, every vulnerability. Because in 8 days, this house would become ground zero for the demolition of Natalie's carefully constructed plans. I made one final call that night to Cooper. "I need you to find out where Dylan drinks," I requested. "His regular spots, his patterns, planning something?" he asked carefully. "Just gathering intelligence," I replied. Cooper paused. "Be careful, Henry. Men like him when cornered. Men like him have never dealt with men like us," I cut in. 3 husbands with nothing left to lose and everything to protect. "I'll have the information tomorrow," he assured me. I hung up and returned to studying the blueprints. But my mind was elsewhere, imagining the look on Natalie's face when she realized her plan had failed. The panic in Dylan's eyes when he understood the men he'd wronged were coming for him. The relief in my daughters' faces when they realized their father had fought for them. The coalition was formed. The strategy was set, now came the execution. In architecture, controlled demolition requires precise timing, strategic placement of charges, and the knowledge that once you push the button, there's no going back. D-Day arrived on Friday. October 25th, an unseasonably warm autumn day. Natalie had been practically glowing all week, her secret knowledge of impending victory making her magnanimous. She'd even cooked dinner twice, performances of domesticity that felt like victory laps before a race she thought she'd already won. "I need to talk to you tonight," she'd said that morning, unable to hide her anticipation. "Something important. Can you be home by 6? "Of course," I'd replied, buttoning my shirt with steady hands. "Family first." She'd actually smiled, genuine for once, though not for the reasons she thought. The girls were at my parents' house for the weekend, a planned visit that Natalie had encouraged. "You know how they love their grandparents," she'd said, "and we could use some alone time to talk." Indeed, we could. I spent the day at the office in genuine meetings, my phone recording everything, establishing an ironclad alibi for what would come later. At 4 p.m., I met briefly with John and Mike at a coffee shop downtown. "You ready?" I asked. John nodded grimly. "Helen's expecting me at 6:30. Says we need to discuss something about our future. Lisa's been giddy all week," Mike added. "Like a kid before Christmas. Remember I instructed, let them speak first. Let them present their papers. Then we counter." "Turner has everything ready?" "All 3 sets filed at 3 p.m. today," John confirmed. "The process servers will arrive at 7 sharp. And after?" Mike asked, though we all knew the answer. "Murphy's at 9, I said. "Dylan will be at Finnegan's until then." Cooper confirmed his Friday pattern hasn't changed in 6 months. We parted ways, 3 men heading toward the destruction of our marriages and the salvation of our futures. I arrived home at 5:45 to find Natalie in the dining room. Our wedding china laid out, candles lit, a perverse parody of romance. She wore the red dress I'd bought her for our 10th anniversary. The irony was suffocating. "You look beautiful," I said truthfully, hanging my jacket in the foyer. "Thank you," she replied warmly. She gestured to a chair. "Sit," We need to talk. I sat across from her, the table I'd designed stretching between us like a battlefield. She had a manila folder beside her plate, her fingers drumming against it nervously. "Henry," she began, her practiced speech flowing smoothly, "we've grown apart. You know it, I know it. You're married to your work, and I've become invisible in my own home." I said nothing, letting her unspool the narrative she'd crafted. "The girls barely know you. You've missed recitals, parent-teacher conferences, family dinners. I've been essentially a single mother while you build your empire," she continued. Tears perfectly timed. The lies came so easily. Each one a dagger she didn't know was double-edged. "I've tried," she went on. "God knows I've tried. But I can't live like this anymore. I need someone who sees me, who values me. Is that why you've been f***ing Dylan?" I asked calmly. The words landed like a sledgehammer. Natalie's performance shattered, her face cycling through shock, denial, and finally, cornered rage. "I don't know what you're—" she started. I slid my folder across the table. Page 1. The Marquis Hotel, September 3rd, 2:15 p.m. Page 2. The Grandview, September 10th. Should I continue? Her hands shook as she opened the folder. Cooper's photos were crystal clear, undeniable. Her entering hotels, Dylan's house, his car, the emails to her sister. "The attorney consultations! How dare you spy on me!" she whispered. But the outrage was hollow. "How dare you plan to steal my children while spreading your legs for a parasite who's done this to 3 other families?" I shot back. She flinched. "You don't understand. Dylan loves me. He sees me for who I really am. A cheating wife willing to destroy her family for afternoon hotel visits?" I pulled out my phone, showing her Cooper's full report on Dylan. "He's following the same playbook he used on his last 3 conquests. You're not special, Natalie. You're just the current target." The tears came then, real ones. "This doesn't change anything. I'm filing for divorce." "I'll get the girls, the house, everything," she insisted desperately. "No," I said calmly, sliding Turner's paperwork across the table. "You won't." She read the filing, her face paling with each page. Adultery with extensive documentation. Financial fraud with forensic accounting. Parental alienation with dated evidence. Turner had crafted a masterpiece of legal destruction. "The girls are with my parents," I continued. "They'll stay there until this is resolved. Your personal belongings are packed in the garage. You have 1 hour to leave." "You can't do this." She stood, rage replacing tears. "This is my house too!" "Was. Your signature on the deed was negated the moment you began stealing from our joint accounts to fund your affair. It's all in the filing," I explained coldly. She grabbed her phone, presumably to call Dylan or her attorney, but I'd anticipated that too. "Patricia Hoffman has been informed that she's been advising 3 clients in coordinated fraud. The Bar Association will be very interested in her ethical violations. As for Dylan, he's about to have his own problems," I warned. "What did you do?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Nothing yet. But in about 2 hours, he's going to learn what happens when you target the wrong families," I promised. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 p.m. The process server was professionally neutral as he served Natalie with the formal papers. Behind him, I could see neighbors beginning to notice the drama. By tomorrow, everyone would know. Natalie left at 7:23, her suitcases hastily thrown in her BMW, her perfect facade crumbling with each step. She tried one last manipulation at the door. "The girls will hate you for this," she threatened. "No," I corrected. "They'll hate you for making it necessary." As her taillights disappeared, I texted John and Mike. "Phase 1 complete." Their responses came quickly. Both Helen and Lisa had reacted similarly: shock, rage, denial, and finally defeat when confronted with overwhelming evidence. The coordinated strike had worked perfectly. At 8:45, I drove to Murphy's. John and Mike were already there, bourbon warming their hands. We didn't celebrate. This wasn't a victory, just necessary demolition. "You ready for Phase 2? John asked. "Cooper says he's 3 drinks in at Finnegan's," Mike reported, checking his phone. Alone at the bar, hitting on the bartender. We finished our drinks and drove to Finnegan's in John's SUV. The parking lot was dimly lit. Security cameras conveniently broken for months, according to Cooper's research. Dylan emerged at 10:17. Stumbling slightly, his phone pressed to his ear. We could hear him leaving what sounded like his 4th voicemail for Natalie. "Baby, call me back. Something's wrong. Helen and Lisa aren't answering either, his desperate voice carried across the lot. He never saw us coming. John reached him first, the hockey stick from his son's equipment bag catching Dylan behind the knees. He went down hard, phone skittering across the asphalt. "Evening, Dylan," I said conversationally as Mike zip-tied his wrists. "We need to talk about your dating habits." We dragged him behind the dumpsters, out of sight from the street. His eyes darted between us, recognition dawning. "You're Natalie's—" he started. "We're the husbands," John corrected coldly. "The ones you thought were too stupid to notice." The beating was methodical, purposeful. We focused on damage that would last, nothing that would kill him, but enough to ensure he'd remember this night every time he tried to seduce another man's wife. Mike worked his ribs. John handled the legs, ensuring Dylan wouldn't be jogging past anyone's wife for months. I saved the most important lesson for last. "You're going to leave town," I told him, my knee pressing into his groin as he writhed. "Tonight. If we see you again, if you ever contact our wives again, if you even think about targeting another family, we'll finish what we started." The final blow was deliberate, focused, and devastating. Dylan screamed, the sound muffled by John's hand. His days of seducing married women were over. The damage to his groin would ensure that. We left him there, bloodied and broken, his phone just out of reach as he crawled toward it. By the time he managed to call for help, we were long gone, alibis solid, justice served. I arrived home at midnight to find 17 missed calls from Natalie. I deleted them all unheard, then poured myself a scotch and sat in my office, looking at the photos on my desk. Emma and Sophie at last year's Christmas. Natalie and me on our wedding day. The groundbreaking ceremony for my first building. I'd demolished my marriage tonight, but the foundation for my daughter's future remained intact. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, accusations, and the messy business of untangling 16 years of life together. But tonight, in the quiet of the house I'd built with such hope, I raised my glass to the three men who'd stood together against a common enemy. We'd won, but victory tasted like ashes and necessity. The demolition was complete. Now came the harder task of rebuilding. 6 months later, April 26th, I stood in the doorway of my home office, watching Emma and Sophie work on their homework at the dining room table. The same table where Natalie had tried to serve me divorce papers now hosted algebra textbooks and history projects. The divorces had been swift and decisive. Turner's preparation ensured complete victory. All three men retained their assets, gained full custody, and their ex-wives were left with nothing but legal fees and criminal records for theft. Natalie's attorney, Patricia Hoffman, had withdrawn from all three cases after the Bar Association opened an ethics investigation. Natalie lived with her parents now, working at a marketing firm 2 towns over. The girls saw her every other weekend, supervised visits they increasingly tried to avoid. "Dad?" Emma looked up from her geometry. "Can we skip Mom's weekend? Sophie has a debate tournament." "We'll discuss it," I said, though I already knew I'd let them choose. Dylan had vanished after spending 4 days in the hospital. Cooper tracked him to Arizona, where he worked at a gym, keeping a low profile. The damage we'd inflicted had been permanent. Medical reports showed extensive trauma that would limit his activities for life. His predatory days were over. Helen worked as a receptionist in a studio apartment. Lisa had moved back to Ohio with her parents. Word of Dylan's beating had spread quickly through our affluent community. He'd left town in shame, his reputation destroyed. John, Mike, and I met every Thursday at Murphy's. We'd formed an unbreakable bond through our shared experience. John's firm had landed a major contract. Mike's software company had gone public. My own firm had expanded, breaking ground on the city's largest commercial complex. "Dad, I'm hungry," Sophie called. "Pizza?" "Already ordered," I replied. As we ate dinner together, I thought about the man I'd been 6 months ago, the architect who'd thought he could build a perfect life through planning. That man had died the night I'd discovered Natalie's betrayal. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "Can we talk about increasing my visitation?" I deleted it without responding. Turner would handle any legitimate requests through proper channels. "Movie night?" Emma asked after dinner, Sophie holding popcorn. As we settled in to watch their choice, Sophie curled against my left side, Emma on my right. This was what I'd fought for. My daughter's safe, happy and secure. "Love you, Dad," Sophie murmured. "Already drowsy. Love you too." "Both of you?" I replied. Later, I carried them to their bedrooms, tucking them in like when they were small. Emma stirred as I pulled her blanket up. "Dad, thanks for fighting for us," she whispered. "Always, sweetheart. Always," I promised. I returned to my office and opened my laptop. A new project waited. A women's shelter downtown that needed pro bono architectural work. The irony wasn't lost on me, but there was no contradiction. I protected what deserved protection. I destroyed what threatened it. As dawn approached, I thought about my opening confession. I built my life like I build my buildings, with precision, reinforced foundations, and contingency plans. But I never planned for the day I'd have to demolish everything I'd created to save what mattered most. Now I knew better. Every structure I designed, whether physical or personal, included demolition plans, because sometimes tearing something down was the only way to build something stronger. The sun rose over my neighborhood. Somewhere, Natalie was waking to another day of consequences. Dylan was nursing injuries that would never fully heal. 3 broken marriages lay in ruins. But in my house, my daughters were safe. 3 men had formed an alliance forged in betrayal. Justice had been served. I closed my laptop and headed to the kitchen. Saturday meant pancake day. The girls would wake soon, hungry and happy, unburdened by the knowledge of how close they'd come to losing everything. "Pancakes!" Sophie cheered as she raced downstairs. "With chocolate chips?" Emma asked hopefully. "Always," I said, serving them plates piled high. I'd built my life once with love and trust. When that foundation crumbled, I rebuilt it with strategy and fear. Sometimes the strongest structures rise from the rubble of what came before. The foundation I'd built from the ruins was ugly, perhaps, mortared with rage and reinforced with vengeance. But it would never crack, never crumble, never fail to shelter what I'd fought to protect, and that was everything. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.